Hello everyone, welcome back to the Maverick channel. We talk about, well, real world use cases of digital currencies. And this is perfect. I've got two guests here. I'm very honored to have these two guests. These guys are OGs in the crypto space and they have some extremely good content on their channel about the metaverse. And they're actually builders as well. I like talking to people that are builders because then they go under the trenches and they know what the truth is, what the objective reality is. Anyway, so before getting ahead of myself, I'm so happy to have you guys on my show. And could you please introduce yourselves just briefly so that the audience knows who you are?
Sure. My name
I'm
is
very
Will.
honored to have you guys.
No, I appreciate it. No, I appreciate you reaching out and talking about like the metaverse and everything. So my name is William.
My name is Isaac, but everyone calls me I-Man.
I-Man, yeah.
I mean, there's like a
I-Man.
Yeah, we started off as just podcast bros who just like really like crypto and stuff, but over the years it's evolved and morphed. Now we just have so many things going on, right?
Yeah.
Will does a much better job at breaking down like all these different initiatives we have in our life.
Yeah, so we founded our the Block Runner podcast in 2019 in the peak of the bear. And then in the midst of starting a podcast, we started a different project called MetaZone, which is focused on the metaverse. Right.
Yeah, we were introduced to Decentraland because of the podcast.
Because of the podcast,
you know, we're just analyzing different projects and like, hey, this mana token seems interesting.
Like let's check it out.
Yeah, but back then there was nothing. There was no virtual world present or nothing to kind of like jump into to even understand what the metaverse is supposed to be. Right? It was just a concept.
Right.
But nonetheless, we had a discussion with DCL Blogger, aka Maddie, on our podcast.
Oh, nice.
Yep. Yeah. So he was like our. He was our Andreas Antonopoulos of the metaverse, right? He's the one who convinced us, or like, you know,
he explained Decentraland what it was, because at the time it was just a black grid of just squares,
just dots.
Yeah.
It's like, and there's all these hope. It's supposed to be a VR thing, and just all this dreams. Right?
Okay.
But then
before we get ahead of ourselves, okay, in case anyone's not aware, these guys basically they started. I got to know them through MetaZone. I was fascinated by MetaZone, which is a place where you can build these things called metas, which is a unique way of interacting with the metaverse. Sort of a live interaction with the metaverse. So, I mean, you can deploy these assets. There could be buildings. There could be all the way to DeFi and finance, all the way to games and play to earn. And you can deploy these things on their platform such that you can sell them, you can trade them, and then you can also deploy them on their platform directly onto Decentraland, which is the first, essentially, or the biggest metaverse out there. Yep. So that's how I got to find out about you guys. So in case you don't know about Decentraland, just type in Google Decentraland, which is essentially the first decentralized sort of metaverse concept or virtual world, but later referred to as the metaverse because of Mark Zuckerberg and all that. Yeah. It has become the buzzword for that. So very, very, very honored to have you guys. Yeah. So yes.
That snowballed us into other projects. So yeah, just one last plug is the ROVI project as well. That's like our
I'll pull it up a little bit. I pulled up MetaZone initially. I also pulled up ROVI because a lot of people won't have an idea what this stuff means, especially if they're not embedded in these ecosystems.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So ROVI is more of our take, our thesis on what we think is going to be a sustainable business model in the metaverse. And that thesis is about distributing the components of a game, like fishing and battling and upgrading, and all these components now become NFTs, which we call metas. And those metas are then distributed to a community that host the different functions of the game. And now you have a community running the game, being nodes in a network, if you will, and they're hosting all these different components of the game, and they're incentivized to push the game and help people join the game and participate in the whole ecosystem. And so it's basically our take of our representation of what we think is going to be the most sustainable way to build a content, any content, game, anything for the metaverse, a completely distributed version of content. And so we have ROVIs, and our idea here, the reason why we built it is because we needed to understand the creator side for the metaverse. And by building ROVI, we're actually building features and functions into the MetaZone platform for anyone to come in and create their own ROVI-like experience, right? A completely distributed components of an entire
Guys,
system.
sorry to cut you off, but congratulations. I just realized today when I was checking my, I was trying out some play to earn in Decentraland, and I realized on the events page, ROVI was like trending three different ways on the platform. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. So that's an interesting milestone.
Yeah, it's getting crazy.
So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So essentially, for those that do not know, in Decentraland, you have these plots of land that you can, if you buy them or if you have access to them, if you're being delegated to them, you can deploy whatever you want. If you know how to, if you're a developer, you know how to use the software development kit. You can almost sort of build whatever you want. So when you go into the metaverse, you can actually see these guys, ROVIs, or these bots running around and doing different kinds of things. So it makes it easier, sort of democratizes that building process. It makes it easier to have these items on your metaverse and performing different activities. And that's why on their website, you can see, I haven't actually used ROVI, but intuitively I could see there's a transporter. You could explain a little bit, a little bit more about, for example, the transporter, the supercharger, the ROVI itself.
Yeah, so these are good representations of what we call metas, functional assets that are deployable in the metaverse. As a matter of fact, Meta is an acronym for Metaverse Enabled Tokenized Application. And these metas are completely distributed and deployable in Decentraland, and in the future, multiple metaverses that have SDKs running in them. And this, like the transporter, the supercharger, are just representative of functions of a game. So the transporter allows you to put up assets, loot that you find in the game, and allow you to trade them amongst people for the Gears token, which is our off-chain component, off-chain token for now, which will eventually be on-chain. And so that represents the transporter's functionality. The supercharger's functionality is whenever ROVI goes into battle or goes into Decentraland, their battery depletes, and so you would have to use a supercharger to recharge them. And so there's going to be a fee to do that, but that fee gets distributed to a bunch of landowners and meta owners that are hosting the game themselves. And so this is just a good representation of what a distributed game actually looks like for the metaverse.
Oh, nice. So, that's really cool. That's really cool. So you have a distributed game. People have access to these things, and they can somehow monetize these assets without necessarily having to learn Blender, build that stuff themselves, 100%. Deploy the smart contracts themselves. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. So just to sort of backtrack a little bit, there's Block Runner, which is the podcast that you guys run. So in case. I guess at the end we'll post the links in the channel so that people can get access to those things. Then there's the MetaZone, which was the sort of first major project that you guys built, which is pretty amazing. It's a pretty complete project. And then ROVI AI, so to add the game side of things, because there's that other play to earn side of things. Could you guys talk a little bit about Decentraland and sort of what motivated you to get into this? Because initially you said you got into the whole crypto space through Bitcoin. So how did that sort of translate into Decentraland?
I think Iman would be the best one to explain, simply because you've been part of a metaverse-like experience with World of Warcraft, right?
Yeah, I think it made the most sense to me intuitively, like the value of virtual economies. Because I spent 10 years basically dedicating my life to one, from like age probably like 15 to 25, right? My priority in life. Yeah, it is. But there is a lot of good reason for it. It was that engaging. It was that immersive, like the experience of World of Warcraft.
I think it paid off.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now looking back, I agree. I think it equipped me with a lot of understandings of how like economics intuitively operate, because that game was very sustainable, right? These weren't real tangible assets that you could actually liquidate, like you can, a blockchain asset. But nonetheless, it still operated the same way from like a human psychology perspective. It's still galvanized and had the right incentive alignments for all the actors within the ecosystem to do what it is they're supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
They had open markets. They had a resource economy spread throughout a virtual ecosystem, right? And everybody had the equal opportunity to participate in that and identify, this is what I want to do. I'm going to pick a profession, right? I'm the miner. I'm going to run around the world hitting rocks all day long.
It's right. Okay.
And then, but all this stuff is traded on a marketplace, just like today, these things happen on OpenSea and MetaZone, all these different marketplaces, right? So it made sense to me. Like, we heard about Decentraland, what it could be. And I always like to say, like, the metaverse is like the ultimate inflection point and like the utility grounds for all of Web3.
Yeah.
You know, it might not be obvious yet, but at some point,
have you guys realized that in Decentraland you can deploy multiple sins on the same piece of land, which essentially that sort of, this land is infinite, which is, I think, if Decentraland is to potentially dominate the sort of metaverse infrastructure in some way, shape, or form, a landowner in Decentraland could deploy their land to sort of multiple people for multiple use cases. And that's like a massive monetization sort of framework that you potentially look at, which means it could potentially exponentially increase the land of one parcel because of how much it could be used for, how much it 100%. Could be. In other words, physical land cannot be used for multiple things.
Yes.
But
agreed. Yeah.
I was listening to your podcast, what you guys were talking about, the $1 trillion metaverse space. I mean, that's how it becomes a $1 trillion metaverse space, because of how much you can do versus the physical world.
It's true.
So that was quite interesting.
Yeah, you could be a landowner who is hosting a boxing night, right? A boxing, like a fight.
Yeah.
And then the next week it could be a tournament for ROVIs, right? So it could be completely up to the landowner to decide what exactly event that they want to put on.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's much more. It's much more fluid of an economy than the real world. Yeah, there's a lot of limitations with real life, right?
Yeah, so, if you get traction with one game, you deploy on your land, you maximize that traction, and then if another game comes in, you can just replace that content and just keep it going.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what's even interesting, sorry to cut you off, guys.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's not just that you can deploy one thing and then you wait for the next day. Literally, someone could show up with a particular NFT and they could have access to a whole different experience simultaneously, whilst someone else is using the land for a completely different thing.
That's true.
Which is pretty interesting.
That's why I like to say, the metaverse is the playground for Web3, meaning like we're going to have to prove a lot of things in the metaverse before we kind of like confidently transfer them to the real world, because they have much more dire consequences in our physical existence than they do the virtual. So it's like a huge thing we could leverage from a technology perspective as like a species, right? Let's test things in the metaverse, like governance models, different economic sustainable models, things like this, right? And see what happens, see what sticks, because I mean, if things go wrong, there are monetary consequences, but I don't think anybody's gonna we're not gonna like spark a war or anything like that. if like we crumble some virtual economy, it's different in the real world. Like these things have much more serious consequences,
Speaking of governance, guys, there's a bunch of questions. First of all, could you first quickly run through the whole how you come up to that number of a potentially $1 trillion marketplace? Could you also blend that into things like move to earn, play to earn, and you did a podcast about dynamic NFTs. Could you tie that into together? Could you tie all that together?
Sure.
What are dynamic NFTs? What's going on?
Yeah. So let's talk about the $1 trillion metaverse economy and how these Grayscale and City and a bunch of these big names. It'd be different if I told you, Mawa, that we think it was going to be a $1 trillion economy. It would be kind of hard to believe, but it's not us saying it.
No, we're just reacting to what everyone else is saying. And we're trying to figure out
how we get there.
You keep bringing up the comparisons, like, well, video games isn't even close to $1 trillion yet, collectively.
Barely like $200 billion industry.
So where's all the other value coming from?
Yeah.
That's the big question. Yeah.
So here's what we think is if we take a look at the internet, and the internet is this multi-trillion-dollar volume sort of infrastructure. And what we're saying is the metaverse is going to be basically the internet, but in 3D. And so perhaps that's how they make that leap. But if you think about what makes the internet valuable is the applications that run on the internet. Facebook, Amazon, all these different applications that's what makes the internet extremely valuable.
Yeah.
It's not the internet itself, it's the applications on the internet.
Yeah.
So then it's like, well, you know, how is the metaverse going to be a $1 trillion industry? Like, how do we actually get there? And it's going to be the applications that run within the metaverse. So let me give you an analogy. If you bought a laptop and all it was running was an operating system, what could you do with it, right? Well, think about all the things you could do with just an operating system. It wouldn't be a lot of things you could do with it, right?
Unless you're a developer.
Unless you're a developer, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why you can do something with your laptop is because of applications. You have Word, you have all these different applications. Now you can actually use it. So when you run around in Decentraland,
the user interface,
right? When you run around in Decentraland, that's like an operating system. Right now, there's not a whole lot of activity happening in Decentraland because there's not a whole lot of applications. And so that's what we saw when we were building MetaZones. Like, we need to be the application layer of the metaverse, because otherwise there's no way anybody would go to the metaverse to do anything.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's how we believe the metaverse will transition to a multi-trillion-dollar industry, is through the applications.
Mm-hmm. Also,
right.
I think also like the economics of the metaverse and I guess just like the technical access of it is, I think, what's foundational to an expansionary event for the global economy in general. I think the reason why I say that, because it was proven with Axie Infinity. Before, it was much more skeptical whether or not we could attract user bases of that scale. But once Axie, I guess, achieved it, they had like a peak, a multi-million user base, mostly from like a singular region of the planet, like Southeast Asia,
right?
Were the main participants, right? Because they proved, like, as long as you can create an economic model that has like the proper incentives, or if anybody from any corner of the earth can participate in that and extract value for themselves by participating, right, like that is huge, because there's a lot of people on the planet that don't have access to that same opportunity,
it's
like
true.
In the physical sense, So, and that's kind of the nature of how our monetary system has been set up. It's very exclusionary to the majority of humans, right? So in the virtual, we have a chance to kind of rectify that. And if we could achieve it and kind of build sustainable economies in the virtual sense, because, Axie Infinity, it rose and fell because it's a very early interpretation of what like a digital economy should be.
Right.
Basically, it wasn't enough complexities within it, so it just kind of like wasn't, sustainable in the long run. But nonetheless, they proved that it's possible.
Yeah.
You can onboard millions of people and to participate in virtual economies.
Yeah, they onboarded an entire country, the Philippines.
Basically.
Yeah.
So they're on their way to basically, like, Axie could have just been their main, like, export.
Sure.
The actual Axies.
Yeah.
Like, that would be the Philippines, like, #1 export good.
Yeah, and that's something that we call the digital nation. The metaverse is going to be a digital version of a country where anyone on the planet can participate. And it's not only going to be play to earn, it's going to be all kinds of activities that will persist in the metaverse, and there's going to be ways to earn beyond just the gaming aspect. The gaming for right now is the lowest hanging fruit. It's the easiest to understand, and that's why you're seeing a lot of play to earn stuff. But play to earn is different when you have a play to earn context in the metaverse, right? That's why when you walk into Decentraland and you kind of click on, what's popular in Decentraland, you're going to see a bunch of ROVI stuff, because that is what's active right now in Decentraland. And so we have the easiest method to like think of activities in the metaverse is going to be games, but eventually it's going to be far more than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be far more than that, but we need sort of a use case that can pull in the degens, the initial people that are willing to grind, that have the time or the interest to actually do things to prove out these business models. And when you have a lot of pool of these populations of people, participating in these things, then you pull in eventually the capitalists, the people that are willing to, to pump in the money. And there's one time you guys said that you were able to sort of, you spoke of a token, which is one of the most dominant tokens, is the mana token when it comes to Decentraland, which could potentially be quite valuable. And I think I listened to one of your podcasts one time, and you did mention that you were able to double your position, something like that. I don't know when I heard that. I think you're able to monetize MetaZone, something that. Yeah. So I truly believe in monetization, because providing free things doesn't necessarily provide value. So
yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, we've definitely been around long enough to see what's sustainable and what is not. Yeah, and like
most of the activities in Decentraland are not sustainable.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, if you can't figure out how to monetize a particular activity, it's just not worth doing, because it won't last that long, right? Things need to be sustainable. That's how we have an economy.
Yeah.
And so I think what you're talking about is when we launched MetaZone, we launched with Decentraland. So Decentraland launched February 20th, 2020.
Yeah.
And right before COVID, we launched right along with them. And we ended up generating like 50,000 mana in like a day or something, or like a week.
Yeah. Right.
And and so that doubled our position, because we had done a lot of activities with Decentraland for like game jams and things like that. So in like a week, we doubled it. And it's like, well, this is something that is clearly needed. And so that's kind of how we started, and it proved that, you know, the stuff that we were doing was sustainable.
Yeah, and that was mostly off of like our own creations. You know, we distributed like the initial games that, you know, Corv, he's our main developer. He was the one who created MetaZone, and he's the one who's pushing all the technology forward to like enable this application layer we talk about.
Yeah.
So it was mostly our stuff in the beginning, but we built this platform, and through showcasing that you could build content and distribute it to landowners for them to host, they were starting to benefit from that, right? They were participating in this whole game ecosystem we created. They were earning mana themselves. It wasn't just us.
Yeah.
They were also earning as well, which is the point.
The builders are earning as well. That's how you create that network effect. If others using your platform earn, that's the true value. That's where it comes from.
Exactly.
That's and then
really cool.
It also, we just started, somebody just submitted a meta one day. Like, like, well, oh, somebody else wants to make stuff. That's really cool. So then we posted it on the marketplace. Guess what? It sold out. It was like a house. A lot of people don't know how to build stuff.
Yeah.
You know, somebody made 10 versions of a really beautiful house. I think his name was VR Planet. And they sold out, you know, and then somebody submitted something after that, and it just snowballed from there. Before you knew it, we had over like 150 metas within like the first
couple of months.
6 months. Yeah. And that to us was like, that was it.
Yeah.
Our assumptions are proven. Like, there is a demand. There is a creator economy just waiting on the sideline, waiting for their opportunity to start making content and to participate in like the digital economy that is to come, right? It's just, it isn't obvious yet, but as the metaverse,
it isn't obvious yet, but
But, so
essentially, if you wait around for it to show up, I don't think that's how it happens. It just sort of blends into It won't wait for you. Yeah. If someone's waiting for CNN or Fox News or whatever, or mainstream media to tell them when it's here, I don't think that's going to happen that way.
Yeah.
Usually,
speaking of that,
it's too late. Yeah. If you wait for those people, for sure.
So what do you guys think about, before I get into, since you guys are in the US, that means there's a lot of tension around regulatory, oversight by the SEC and different organizations. But before we get into that, could you guys explain this thing? There's these things called NFTs. So could you talk about like dynamic NFTs or soul-bound tokens, if you've heard of something like that?
Yeah, for sure. Dynamic
as a way to educate the people.
Is interesting because right now, when typically when you think of an NFT, you think of art, you think of like Beeple, you think of like all the crazy picture projects that have been out there.
Yeah, Bored Apes,
stuff like that. Yeah. And ultimately, these NFTs don't really do anything, right? It's just a picture, but you can add functionality to an NFT, right? And so since the beginning from MetaZone, we've had what's called now dynamic NFTs, right? But the interesting thing about what the dynamic NFT is proposing is that you can do that all on chain. And not only that, Chainlink is offering an on-chain capability to manage that dynamic aspect of an NFT.
Yeah.
So so now we have Chainlink, which is a technology that takes data that's off-chain and moves it on-chain, right? So let's say you're upgrading a ROVI. Typically, that's an off-chain transaction. So through Chainlink, they can take that off-chain activity and move it on-chain so that your NFT reflects that update. And so that's specifically what a dynamic NFT is off-chain activity on-chain.
Yeah, I guess dynamic, the word dynamic is what's critical, right? It just means an NFT that is capable of change.
Change, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a forever asset. Yeah, like it's like a Bored Ape is a Bored Ape, but a Bored Ape could be a Bored Ape with a sword of greatness.
Yeah.
If I don't know, if something happens, if it's like an asset within some other game economy, game ecosystem, all of a sudden it evolves and potentially has more value because of that, right? It's dynamic. So it introduces more flexibility, I guess, to developers such as ourselves who want to build game ecosystems or whatever. Now we can leverage this much more dynamic of an asset to, you know, create things like leveling schemes or upgradability, all these very important features to a game, right? But we want this stuff to be much more on-chain integrated as opposed to like
off-chain versions of the same
So,
thing.
so that also reduces, I guess, to some extent, the amount of work an artist has to do if you constantly have to design different NFTs for different functionalities. You could implement some of these functionalities, and it reduces, which as well reduces the barrier to entry in some way, shape, or form. But have you heard of soul-bound tokens? And if you have, could you say something about that as well?
Yeah, so Soulbound Tokens is the brainchild of Vitalik, right?
Yeah, another great innovation from good old World of Warcraft, dude.
Yeah. So Soulbound is a concept in World of Warcraft, right?
Yeah, it's part of the game economy there as well. Like, you know, when you defeat enemies in the world, they drop objects, right? Goods. Some of them are goods that you can trade to other players or put on the open marketplaces and make a profit from that.
Yeah.
Other things are soulbound, meaning like once you receive it, they're no longer tradable.
Yeah.
It is assigned to your character's identity for the rest of that character's life. The only way you could give it to somebody else is if you give them your character, your avatar.
Your account.
And that person, according to Vitalik, has the right to take it back. So, for example, if you delegate your soulbound token to someone else, I mean, you can always just show up and claim it because, I mean, it's still bound to you, regardless of whether you're delegating it to someone else or not. So it's almost like you're not supposed to be able to do that.
Correct.
You know?
Yeah. So soulbound specifically means non-tradable. So basically,
non-tradable.
POAPs, basically like earning a degree or something that is like within you, like you cannot trade.
Right.
That's the implications of it.
Like your blood type, your medical records. You know, those are things. Yeah. Right.
That's a good example.
Yeah, those are not tradable, right? Why would they be, right?
Yeah. But this opens like another avenue of I guess things that developers can leverage again to build stronger ecosystems, right? Like now you can build
decentralized identity.
Well, like components of that, right?
Right.
And you can it's everything about when you build
a lot of companies are looking into decentralized identities. It's going to be one of the biggest things, and whoever figures that out,
100%,
is going to be a big player.
Yeah, one of the biggest things when it comes to like creating sustainable decentralized ecosystems is incentive alignment.
Yeah.
Right. So like being able to, I guess, distribute and assign soulbound accolades to participants within an ecosystem, I think is going to be like one of the bigger use cases for these soulbound tokens, right? Because if we're gonna have truly decentralized, services or products in the world, and that's coming from human organizations that aren't controlled by centralized entities, there has to be ways to recognize contribution. And that isn't tradable, right? That way you could trust people. It's about establishing trust within these ecosystems. That's why identity is so important. Even though we don't want to have to trust others, some roles require such. When it comes to like, who's going to develop, say the DAO proposes like an SDK change for Decentraland, right? Who are we going to trust to enact these implementations? Like if we're going to go hire like some Google engineers, I don't know. It's got to be somebody who has some record of like, pushing updates to some other protocol in his past, right? These are things that he could carry with him through soulbound tokens, right? They could acknowledge those contributions and they could follow his on-chain career, essentially. Just like a resume does in our life, Yeah, but you can fake that in the real world,
Yeah, but the implications is all your accolades you wouldn't be able to fake because they come from like institutions. Like let's say you worked at Coinbase, is like Coinbase could issue you a soulbound token that you actually work there.
Exactly.
And then now people who keep saying that they worked at, former Google engineer, now they'll be able to prove that they got that token.
Yeah, believe it or not, like in the Web3 space, like it's actually a problem, like trusting the developers, especially on the smart contract side.
Just go back to 2017 and ICO. They had, all kinds of like fake fake humans, right, on all these websites.
Exactly, because the thing about smart contracts.
Oh yeah, they had a lot of fake humans.
Yeah, the smart contracts is such a narrow like skill set.
Yeah,
you kind of just have to completely trust whoever can do these things. Like, okay, you say you could build a smart contract, have at it.
Yeah.
But what you're giving them is that opportunity to create like exploits in the future and backdoors. So it's very trust is going to be very important. Like when it comes to
speaking of trust, guys. Regulatory framework. Tell us what's going on. What do you guys think about that? We see some sort of oversight from from particular organizations or factions within the US, and there seems to be some sort of competition for power.
Yeah.
And then we see things like Ethereum 2.0 as well moving to proof of stake, which means it's an easily more central. It's now back to a centralized. It had become sufficiently decentralized, but now it's centralized. So what do you guys have some opinions on that?
Yeah, we just recorded a 20-minute video talking about how the SEC is claiming ownership of the Ethereum network
of Ethereum, right?
Because a lot of the transactions that are being mined are happening on the United States grounds, right?
About 45% of them, something like that. It's not even 51.
Yeah. So 45%. So the next closest to the United States is Germany with 19%.
Yeah.
And so pretty much the United States is claiming ownership of the Ethereum network, and so any transaction that violates any, United States regulatory bodies, they're all like enforceable, right? So what do we think? So there's a couple of angles where we think this is very positive for the price of Ethereum, in that if think of it from a strategic standpoint, if the United States is right that they have claim, like legal claim on the Ethereum network, that means there's incentives for the United States to create regulation that is favorable for crypto startups. And so what does that mean? There's going to be more crypto startups, more positivity towards crypto from a regulatory standpoint, and therefore more centralized activity in that specific land.
Yeah, I think at first it's natural to feel like negative towards these developments, like United States regulation.
I actually get your point.
Yeah. But once you actually, because also we've had these discussions for so long, right? Like how are we actually going to get to $1 million Bitcoin? Right? Because the amount of capital contribution from institutions, and it's going to require huge resource. Funneling into this space, right? So there has to be some sort of macro events to
and the entities,
facilitate that.
The entities with the most resources are companies and countries.
Yeah, nations, right?
Yeah.
So if these assets really are to be regarded as the future, store of value, or the future, just monetary system of our future society, then at some point these geopolitical positions of power have to get involved, and they have to claim their stake.
Yeah.
Which the United States
could you pair freedom of speech within that? Since you've said monetary systems, could you pair in freedom of speech and how that could be related with sort of these new monetary systems?
So freedom of speech, I think it's important to distinguish freedom of speech with let's say code that's written by a developer. So it's going to be tough to like for example, Tornado Cash. That was sanctioned. The sanctioning of Tornado Cash led to the United States completely barring U.S. personnel from accessing a technology, which is unprecedented. And that access is an infringement on the ability to have privacy. And so in some cases with crypto, there's a lot of freedom of speech implications, but I think there's a lot more infringement on the privacy aspect because of the sanctioning of Tornado Cash. So yeah, I mean, it depends on the particular situation, really, is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
But I get what you mean. To add on to the point that you made earlier about the oversight, it gives that extra clarity, which brings in the confidence towards building certain products, because you know what the clarity is around the regulation.
Yeah, and lack of clarity really makes it difficult to build anything with any confidence.
Yeah.
And so that ends up, just making things more difficult.
Yeah. And Will brought up something interesting earlier about how if you paid attention to, I guess, Ethereum's merge and I guess the roadmaps following that, they laid out I think 4 or 5 phases that are going to come after the merge, right? Just because the merge, it's just literally the foundation to get all the other implementations executed on the Ethereum ecosystem to make it, much more mature. But one of the core tenets of the future developments for the Ethereum ecosystem is to really hone in on the decentralization aspect of it, to distribute the node ecosystem as much as possible. So it's about reducing the, I guess, hardware friction that's required, and even removing whole data points that are today being, I guess, facilitated or hosted by the network. The history of all transactions.
That's right.
Removing that from the chain.
Called the purge.
Yeah. These are all different, phases of the future. But
ending with the splurge.
Ending with the splurge.
Yeah.
But if they succeed, right, a more distributed network means there's more participation from people, everyday citizens, right? As long as you have a smartphone, you could be a validator within the ecosystem, right? So what does that do to today's situation where everything is kind of like held by Coinbase, essentially, right?
Yeah.
What it does is create like a much more competitive ecosystem where like resource acquisition, aka Ethereum acquisition, is like really, really, really important. So that's a huge driver for, I guess, a higher valuation. These are the things that make these assets desirable, sought after, right?
Yeah.
Because if you really distribute it, if they do such a good job, you could see that network effect being siphoned away slowly. Like within 10 years, it could be down to 30% instead of 45% in the United States. And now it's distributed globally.
Yeah.
So how does the United States respond?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, they're going to, like you said, establish better regulatory frameworks to encourage more development activity to happen in the United States, or they could be a little more direct about it.
Just straight up. And
let's just acquire as much ETH or Bitcoin as we can from the open market.
Yeah.
Because if we can do that, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do with gold. That's what we do in all asset markets, right? We like to control and have the majority stake, right? Because that's what gives you leverage.
What do you all think? Nice. Okay. What do you all think about Binance? I don't think I've ever asked this question before. It just popped in my mind. What do you think of Binance? It's a massive ecosystem that people seem to be ignoring.
It's bigger than Coinbase.
I think it is. Yeah. It's by volume. I think it's like 10 times.
It's probably bigger.
It's
it's much bigger than Coinbase.
What should we think about Binance in that regard?
And why?
Because it's more scalable. It's more scalable. It's built on the Cosmos. It already leverages tandem algorithms or consensus algorithms that are on the Cosmos side. And the Cosmos side as well has other technologies like the inter-blockchain communication protocol, which already works. So there's that interchain standard of communicating with different chains.
Sure.
And then different chains can also have their own security models and tap into other security models. And then there's other ecosystems building ways to communicate with the Ethereum side, and that has already been done. So I feel like there's Polygon Network, which is essentially a more fulfilled version of what Ethereum would like to be. So what do you guys think of these ecosystems that have come out to be kind of more complete in a certain way, like Binance, like the Cosmos side of things? Yeah. And also, after that, could you talk about some of the isolated ecosystems like Solana?
I think
because Ethereum is one thing. But what about these others that have achieved some of these standards? Like,
no, that's a huge thing to, I guess, understand and recognize. It's not just Ethereum, right? Yeah, there's many ecosystems emerging.
Well, you know what's funny about Binance is why isn't Binance holding a bunch of ETH, and why is Coinbase holding all of it? Why?
That's interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, never thought about that one.
Well, I guess it's just one of these things. I think they have their own ecosystem that they want to support, I guess.
Well, that's what it is. That has to be it.
Yeah, I mean, they're the harborers of BNB. So like you're saying, that ecosystem over time could end up providing more valuable through whatever means.
Yeah.
Right? So at some point, it could become China could come out with their own statement at some point. Like, hey, it's because, all of the, BNB, 50% of BNB is in China or whatever, or within our jurisdiction. Now we have regulatory authority over the BNB network.
So, and what happens to the value of BNB? It goes up.
Exactly. So, at some point there's going to be a huge geopolitical arms race, but yeah, you're right. A lot of it has to do with the perception of value within like the ecosystem itself. Right now, Ethereum has a network effect of being the first.
Yeah.
A lot of the DeFi innovations have emerged from Ethereum. But like you said, Binance, I guess, has integrated all these technical aspects that make it more efficient, more scalable.
More favorable to the developers too.
Yeah, like, and the user.
Yeah, more favorable to the developers too.
Yeah.
And the user, because of the low gas fees and all that.
Right.
Yeah, so right now Ethereum has going for it the network effect, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that most innovation comes from within Ethereum, they have the best developers as of right now.
Right.
But how long will that just maintain, considering that roadmap that we've seen?
Yeah.
It took 5 years to complete the merge. It could take 5, 10, 15 years to get to the splurge. We don't know, right?
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how difficult it's going to be, because we've seen the Ethereum developers promise like much more expedited roadmap trajectories than what actually comes, right?
Yeah.
So we can't really, it's like, we'll get this done in a couple of years. We can't really say that's going to be the case.
Right.
Oh, man. I don't know if you guys, I don't know, people that follow me on Twitter, I don't know, the 10 people that interact with my tweets or something. They're probably aware of my rants against Ethereum, because I got into crypto around 2017, and that was Bitcoin, but I got into the technical side of things. And same with Ethereum, same with XRP. I sort of go into the technical side of things, like create tokens, interact with smart contracts. And I mean, you realize that, I mean, the reality is Ethereum is a bit hard to use. It's not scalable. And then when I look into other ecosystems, like the Cosmos side of things that I've used, these guys have actually built stuff that are way too superior. And if you forget that, what about Polygon? Guys, what view do you have about Polygon? I mean, it's pretty much, it's like Ethereum with a different but they're trying to scale Ethereum, so in a way it's helping the Ethereum network grow. But what about it as an individual?
I think I agree with
if someone had
Vitalik.
$100, if someone had $100, would you ask them to participate in Ethereum or in Polygon in terms of value accrual?
Sure.
I don't normally talk about token value, but in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Vitalik when he says when the Ethereum is the settlement layer for like final finality. But the second layer is more for like iteration, more for like testing, assumptions, innovation, and then once you kind of perfect that, then you kind of move everything to main chain. And I think that's the purpose of like the side chain. Having said that, I mean, part of the roadmap for Ethereum is all these like Surge, Splurge, Verge, all this stuff, and a lot of it is to scale Ethereum, right? Make it more accessible to the wider community at a cheaper cost of gas. So unfortunately, we have to wait for that moment while Polkadot and Binance, all these are advancing with their scalable ecosystems. I think ultimately it's about where the developers are and
100%,
and then as a result the innovation.
And the validators as well, because the validation thing. I mean, carry on.
No, I was just gonna say. The layer 2 thing is important, I guess, when you're considering like the efficiencies or whether or not Ethereum is going to lose that network effect. Because that's the thing. That's what's so beautiful about the ecosystem of Ethereum, that the community really did come together and they've built a lot of innovative solutions to what is like the biggest dilemma for Ethereum, right? Like it didn't necessarily. Ethereum's working on their own internal roadmap for their layer 1 sustainability, but this whole like tertiary ecosystem just emerged independently. I mean, I'm sure they're like funded and supported by the Ethereum Foundation and grants and stuff like this, but nonetheless, like there's some impressive technological innovations happening here with like with roll-ups and zero knowledge proofing and all these things. Like if it keeps continually gets supported, like we're leveraging Polygon right now as an ecosystem, and it's serving very well. There's a little bit of a learning barrier as far as like getting users to transfer their assets to the second layer. It's just friction present, right? But I don't think like it's anything that's not solvable.
Yeah,
right?
And on top of that, Ethereum maybe is the first one, right? And so it has the network effect, but and you could say that there are other networks that have better technology, scalable, faster, cheaper, all that stuff. But the best technologies are not always the winners.
That's true. That's something. I had to struggle with that for a little bit to understand. He's right, and we saw that with the second layer race too, as well.
Exactly.
A lot of it just has to do with like
marketing,
persistency, and like
most importantly, the network effect. If you got that, then you have a major lead.
Yeah. So nonetheless,
and the liquidity as well. Like, because a lot of these ecosystems, they're really trying to plug into Ethereum because of network effect and the liquidity. It's a massive ecosystem. Maybe the other thing is, ETH2, for example, is a proof of stake ecosystem, which means these validator nodes and all these things, but they didn't front that technology, which means, so does that, because Ethereum is a market leader in sort of showing the use case of smart contracts, and also applications like Decentraland being built on top of that. But then when it comes to proof of stake, this it wasn't their domain. So what do you think about this new transition versus proof of work?
Well, I have lots of thoughts. So when it comes to saving the planet and all that, I agree. We need to save the planet, but there's other ways to do it. Like, for example, when you're talking about proof of work, I mean, what if the proof of work, the power came from the sun? Then, what's the cost to the planet, right? It's almost nothing, right? So I don't really consider proof of work just like this thing that just like is designed to destroy the planet, right? I think we can solve that. So, but the question is, what do you think about Ethereum going from proof of work to proof of stake, a technology that Daniel Larimer, right? I think he pioneered it, no?
From EOS, yeah?
EOS, yeah.
From
the
EOS.
delegated proof of stake side, for sure. I mean, if you go back to those early like forum board discussions between Satoshi and like the very small community of developers around him as they were like building the Bitcoin ecosystem, Dan Larimer of EOS was one of the main proponents of like, hey, this is a great economic model and stuff, but it's in the long run doesn't seem scalable or sustainable. So like, you might need to reconsider some different consensus model. I don't think Satoshi agreed. You'd have to go back and read those conversations himself. But nonetheless, it sparked like a whole movement of like, coming up with different consensus, models. And
okay.
So here we are today. Like. I guess proof of stake has I guess won out because it seems to be like much more efficient, much more scalable. I think it's much better as far as like getting contribution and participation from the masses. Like it's much easier just to contribute monetary value as opposed to like hardware components and like not everybody could do that. So it's actually I think a better system for sure.
It is. I agree. So I think that's Ethereum making it easier for a node to participate just by having ETH. You run an application on your phone or a laptop, whatever, and all of a sudden you become a node in the network. That's far easier to decentralize.
Very interesting too, because like also during this whole SEC argument that's emerging these days, I think SEC is saying more, hinting at potentially just the act of staking alone could be seen as a securities.
Is it really?
Security.
Yeah. Just the act of staking a
cryptocurrency. The act of staking.
Imagine if that were to be the case. That means everybody on the planet is like violating.
Hey guys, okay. Exactly. So that becomes a problem because I've been looking at the governance side of things in proof of stake, which means, different validators, you can delegate your tokens to them and they do the whole voting process for you. So if you have these different validators, if you're an institution, you have like $500,000, $1 million, 10 million, whatever, 50 million. You can't just delegate your tokens to any validator. What if you delegate them to some validator within the United States, which is essentially the biggest economy in the world, but then they have this regulatory oversight, which is going to essentially sort of capture your delegation, and all of a sudden you're a criminal for delegating to that. So is this a threat? Do you think that this is a threat towards the? Because initially you said this oversight could help propel the crypto space, but what if this capital fails to flow into the United States because of this sort of uncertain framework where the SEC can just wake up and say anything?
This is the interesting question, because we have to think about incentives. If by delegating to let's call it the United States, you delegate it to the United States, right? Coinbase, whatever it is. And all of a sudden, the United States changes their mind and it's all of a sudden illegal and like you can't do this transaction, you can't do that. You are, as a country, you are disincentivizing people to delegate to that. And so, but that's what they want, right? You can't, just like flip the switch all of a sudden, because it discourages, right?
Yeah.
The superpower from gaining more power.
Yep.
So instead, what I think is going to happen is the United States will be more favorable for these sorts of activities, so that they can maintain that power and therefore, begin doing, collecting taxes from everybody around the globe as a result.
Yeah. I could definitely see.
Oh yeah.
I could definitely see like what this playing out for sure. Like, no matter what the efforts of the Ethereum Foundation to distribute.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if the United States has already shown their position of like, they could sanction whatever they want at any point in time if they've deemed some sort of technology,
which is going to be important for Ethereum Foundation to decentralize everything, because at that point, then the United States can't really say anything.
Well, what they can do is like I said, establish the regulations where you guys can own Ethereum. And you could participate in the network as a validator, but you're gonna have to delegate.
It's supposed to be permissionless. It has to be permissionless, guys.
Yeah. But it's just these are the things that they're gonna have to or try to impose, is what we're assuming.
Okay.
Because
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Since you guys have very limited time, let me ask this question: how would you explain the metaverse to a grandma that has no technology experience? Yeah.
Well, assuming the grandma has to use the internet at least, like if
Facebook. She's a Facebook
okay,
user.
the grandma knows how to use the internet, but just like any other.
She's never played a video game or none of that, right? Like she doesn't like games. She's like, the kids waste their time in those things.
Yeah.
So we can't pitch that.
But she uses Facebook though, so she gets that the social aspect, the social digital aspect.
Yes. So, what is the main value for her? Is what you're asking? I mean, it's one of those things. I think it's really difficult to intuitively grasp until you play a video game. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Because you have to actually feel like what it is to be immersed in a virtual space. And so, if you're a grandma who's only dealt with two-dimensional interfaces your whole life and have only experienced value from that.
Yeah.
If I pitch to you, hey, imagine if the internet was three-dimensional, and now it's like a spatial environment that you could take part in.
Yeah.
Either through whatever interface, it's a VR interface or a brain interface in the future, whatever. Yeah. Right. But she won't get it or like care because she never really had that intimate connection.
Here's what I would say. It's like, hey, grandma, those people that you chat with on Facebook, your friends and family and all that. What if you could chat with them in a 3D space where you can actually have experiences
that's
together?
The way to do it. Like, make it intimate, right?
Yeah.
Much more like, you could be much, you remember when you talked to your grandson, like over Skype or whatever?
Yeah, exactly.
Or I was going to say Discord. Grandma's not in Discord. She's using something, Facebook Talk. I don't know. Yeah. But imagine if you guys were like actually next to each other, sitting on, some virtual couches.
Yeah. Go to a concert virtually.
Yeah. You could
go to a museum.
Exactly. So you really got to pitch to them the intimacy of what the metaverse can provide.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things you can't really feel unless you're in there actively participating.
Experience it.
Yeah. So
that's a good question. I've never really thought about it, but yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be the one who's going to answer it's got to be love, dude. You know what I mean?
It's got to be love. It's got to be love and intimacy. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay. So where can people find you? Before that, what are you guys working on right now, and what do you think is important? What are you guys looking for as the trend that's going to lead us into maybe the next bull market? Because it's normally fronted by some sort of innovation. In 2017, it was the ERC20 standards, and then recently it was the DeFi. So leveraging the smart contracts, sort of like ERC20, but Uniswap and all this stuff. So do you think it's going to be a same repeat of the use case of smart contracts, or might it be something completely different that might sort of lead us into some new wave of crypto adoption?
Well, I think crypto has gotten big enough to where the crypto industry itself has its own little segments, right? The DeFi, Metaverse, NFTs, and they're starting to have their own bull and bust cycles independently.
It's true.
And so
independently, that's true.
So DeFi kind of busted, about 6 to 10 months before Bitcoin busted. And so I think DeFi is probably the next one to kind of rise from the ashes.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if I were to say like what's going to be like as far as NFTs go, I think it's going to be dynamic NFTs. It's going to be the thing that captures the zeitgeist of
dynamic
people.
Yeah, dynamic being like, I think part of like an umbrella narrative of utility or like functional NFTs, right?
Sure,
I think people are just
I'm already seeing different partnerships, especially within Decentraland, different ecosystems, Decentral games partnering with other games. So you find one NFT having different functionalities and different aspects of the metaverse.
Sure.
Absolutely.
That's a good example.
Yeah, figuring out just like real use cases outside of just the collectability and like, scarcity, like just scarcity value to things. And utility, of course, that's our domain. That's been our focus because
So the bull market is going to be utility based, hopefully.
That's what we're expecting.
And what I hear is that NFTs are still they're not dead. They're forever here to stay.
No. They're definitely not dead. But they just like they go through boom and bust cycles like everything will. So but this is how markets mature. You got to get burnt like badly one or two times before you grow up.
Yeah, you mature. Yeah.
Before you grow up.
Yeah.
Before you rise as a phoenix.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. So guys, thank you so much. This was really educative. I learned so much from interacting. So as a last, could each of you give a final word? Then at the end, sort of mention where people can find you, your sort of most dominant social presence. So give a final word. Maybe it could be anything about crypto. I don't know, whatever you're interested in.
Sure.
And then
so you can find us on Twitter. We have 3 main channels, I guess, on Twitter. It's at the Block Runner, at MetaZone.io, and at ROVI AI. And so those are the 3 ones. I guess the final word would say, if you're thinking about starting some sort of project, whether it's YouTube or maybe in the crypto space, the best thing I would say is just start. Like just do it, right? Because that's what we did. Yeah. I mean, Iman and I got together. We had a conversation. We were like, dude, we should record this.
We were literally just eating enchiladas.
Yeah, literally.
And we're like, we thought it was a good conversation. Like, you know what? Maybe let's put it on the internet.
Yeah, and then, I had a microphone. I just hit record, and we just started talking, and that spawned the podcast, which led to MetaZone and ROVI, I would say just start. Yeah.
And now you're close to 9,000 subscribers. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And we're in the bear market, the perfect place to continue the conversations and running the podcast.
Absolutely.
It's the best time to grow. It's the best time to grow, the bear market.
Yeah.
Nice.
So what'd you say, Iman?
Okay.
Final words.
That was very good, dude. Very touching. Very like, but I just, me, it's just, I never thought I would be in the position that I'm in today. Like just to be, I don't know, like I feel like what it is me and Will talk about on a regular basis are
thought leaders.
Yeah. Because we're so ingrained in this metaverse sector and the Web3 ethos overall. It's like, damn, dude, like we're all in on this.
Yeah.
And we feel deep conviction for it.
Yeah.
And we struggle in our daily lives to get like other people to understand why we're so convicted that this stuff is important.
Yeah.
But we've learned to just kind of like accept it. It's like, whatever.
Yeah.
It's actually a good signal. Like if nobody else gets it, but nonetheless, if you watch this video or any of our other talks and you agree with us, like definitely like, come join us on this whole like journey that we're on. Cause it's crazy. It's only the beginning. Like literally
it's an important journey.
We're like in the early 90s of like the internet, the next big, turning point for I think civilization
for humanity.
You only get like a couple of these opportunities in like a lifetime. So
even if you're lucky, you get a couple of opportunities.
But if you're alive, you're lucky. You need to at least have the opportunity. But you could just like let it just fly by. So definitely, I guess tune in. We do weekly calls for MetaZone and Discord. I know MetaZone and ROVI's in our Discord. They're live.
Right.
So we have communities who think like us. They spend time with us 2 times a week. So we definitely encourage anybody to join our Discord. It should be in the description or something like that. And we're more than happy to share our ideas because we need feedback too. Just to make sure we're not going crazy. Pretty much.
I totally agree.
Nice. So it was Cypher and Ironman, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Cypher Will.
Those are names. Okay.
And Iman.
Will and Ironman. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Those are really, really awesome final words, guys. I've learned a lot. I mean, the most important takeaway is that you want to do something, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. Don't wait for it. Actually, one time Elon Musk said that if you're waiting for justification from someone to do something, then I don't think you should be doing it in the first place. You know, just get it done. Yeah. All right. I'm going to link all the descriptions of your socials, Discord, Twitter, and all that, because I think what you guys are building is extremely important. And the Block Runner channel is extremely educative because there's a lot that people can learn from. So I'd urge anyone that has watched this video, click the links in the description, check out these guys, especially the bear market. Use the bear market to your advantage.
Yes.
So you learn all this stuff so that you're ready and prepared. So you can build something that could potentially transform your life or others' lives.
Totally agree.
Guys, thanks so much. Thanks so much for actually accepting to come to
no, I appreciate
being on my show and talking to me. I'm very honored to have you guys.
No, I appreciate you, man.
Anytime, man. Like I said, we align. We're all on the same wavelength. So these are good discussions to have, right?
Yeah.
So anytime, man.
Clearly. Yeah, I would love to have more discussions in the future if you guys are up for it. That'd be really cool.
All right, man.
Yeah, nice.
Great.